So welcome, Tammy.
Hi, Karen. It's great to see you.
Ah, you too. And I tell you what, you're going to be at our Girls with Hammers conference in a couple of weeks, and I am hanging to hear your story. So I kind of cheated and I got in first so I could hear it before anyone else.
Oh no, I'm so pumped to come along. I just incredibly excited. I think it's going to be amazing, and everybody's going to walk away with so much. Being such a high-spirited event.
Yeah.
I think it's just going to be great. So yeah, can't wait.
Oh, good. And you're going to be knackered by the end of the day, so you better bring energy pills. Oh,
Hey mate,
actually,
I go the distance. Remember?
I was going to say that. I was going to say that. You've swam around the planet 1.5 times. I don't reckon you need many energy pills.
No,
We'll,
that's
we'll
it.
be we'll need them to keep up with you.
Endurance is my thing, so not very quick, but I can keep going.
Well, you'll be good. You'll be the only one still buzzing, wanting to dance at the end of the night, and the rest of us will be like, Tammy, we got to stop. Stop it now.
Yeah. I'll be like, but I thought we were just getting going.
Oh God! Oh
That's
God!
the warm up, isn't it?
What have I done?
Might have to be a 2-day event.
Yeah, it might have to be. One for the rest of us and 2 for Tammy.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh God! I tell you what, I'm hanging to talk to you about this stuff because I I've known of you for a long, long time. When I was a kid, well, not when I was a kid, but when I was young. That's not true because you're younger than me. When I was younger, I used to see you on the telly and all that kind of stuff and think to myself, I could never do that. I could never swim across the English Channel. And I'm scared of bloody water. So when watching you and just that brings this fear, the fear of God to my heart, but you just get out and I remember seeing you on the TV getting out of the water with Dawn Fraser, just there. And it was kind of like, these people are incredible. They're just incredible to do this stuff. So I get so much admiration for what you've done. And that's not the only thing you've done. You can respond and then I'll read the list.
Uh, well, first of all, thank you. That's really beautiful of you to say that. It's funny because, now reflecting back, I think, yeah, it's lovely to have done all those things, but it's not so much the achievements that you remember, but it's the journey. It's all
Yeah.
the things that you went through that prepare you for other things on land. So,
Yes.
so it's been lovely, and it's great to really have met all these amazing people and just to have all these experiences and pick up all these skills that help you get through challenges that you don't expect. Like, it's all right in the water, I'm prepared, I know what challenges to expect, but on land, I tell you, that throws some curveballs at you. So I think that's really helped me, especially during the COVID and stuff as well, just to be in the right headspace and to always have that positive attitude. So I've just been so lucky and so blessed to to have the opportunity to do all these things and to meet amazing people like Dawn Fraser. I still have to pinch myself, like when I was swimming and I look up at the boat and I'd see Dawn there, I'd have to, oh my God, that's Dawn Fraser and she's here for me. Like, it was just incredible. So yeah.
How
It's
fantastic.
a bit surreal.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, when you say about land throwing your curveballs, I reckon that's because there's more people on the land than when you're out in the water. There's less people, there's less shit.
True. Yes. Well, you were talking about fears before, and actually, when I started open water swimming, because I was a pool swimmer for many, many years, and when I transitioned into the open water, my biggest fear was the things that lived out in the ocean. And I was like, you'd think that you'd think that someone who can swim really well would just get in there and swim, but I was so timid. I was so scared. And it took me a little bit of time to overcome that fear. And my biggest fear was sharks. And and I had to make it a rational worry. Same thing. Like, I had to think, okay, well, there's probably more sharks on land than there are in the water. So, there's people that are coming out to get you. So you really do try and turn it around. And that's, you have to put your fears under the microscope. And that's when I sort of realized, you have to make it, you have to really calm your mind, because it can just run away and make things into such a big deal. And I think a lot of us have this, no matter what it is. We have this fear of change, because this was such a big change for me. So I think anytime we do something new, straight away that little voice in the head starts, sort of tapping you on the shoulder and going, oh, I don't know whether you can do this, and aren't you scared about this and this and this? And that's when you start to panic, and you really have to take it back and go back into your mind and say, okay, all right, let's look at these things logically. Am I really going to get eaten by a shark? And then, have a look at the statistics. And it is still very scary. And I'm not going to deny that I don't still get like the heart palpitation, especially when I'm swimming, because, you're looking down into the ocean and you see this like peripheral shadow move out of the corner of your goggles. And immediately the first thing that plays in your mind is the Steven Spielberg music, of course. So again, you have to kind of, but I've got a crew looking out for me. So again, I trust in my crew. So you put precautions in place. Like I often swim in a shark cage. So, I love to use that adrenaline and think, okay, it's going to make you swim faster. Just use that to swim faster now. So you're always going to look for the positives, right?
Well, I can tell you, I went out on a dolphin swim, which it's a safe one. It's not, you're not allowed near the dolphins, and the seals. If they come to you, that's fine, but you're not allowed to go there. And so I thought, this will be so good. This is in Port Phillip Bay, and we all know Port Phillip Bay is full of bloody sharks. And if you don't, well, trust me, it is. And anyway, especially out near the channel. Yeah, sorry, I'm not meant to say that because I try to hide that fact. But anyway, I was out. I jumped off the boat, and what they said to you was, don't worry about sharks because all you'll see is brown, and it won't even be shit. It's be your body exploding, and I'm like, oh my god, Father. Anyway, I had these lime green flippers on, and they were lime, like really like iridescent lime. And I jumped in the water, put my mask on, and looked down, and I couldn't even see my bright green flippers. And so they said, put your hand up if you want to get back in the boat. And I put my hand up. I look up, and the boat's bloody gone. He was doing a circle. And you talk about swim, I could have beaten any of your records, I tell you.
Yeah.
I shat myself.
Absolutely. Adrenaline. I tell you what, that adrenaline, that fear makes you do incredible things, doesn't it?
I was out of that water. I reckon I walked on water. I put Jesus to shame that day. I tell you what, I was bloody terrified. But I'm so glad you talked about fears, because fears is, and I, what I really love about fears is that most of them are not even real, and I do this in a lot of my training, and that it's like, let's really look at it. Is it real or is it perceived? And 99% of our fears are bloody perceived. We build up a story, and really sharks. I mean, I'm terrified. I'm terrified of water, but really, you've got more chance of being killed in a bloody car accident than being eaten by a shark. But
do you know what now? Because sharks are obviously my thing. I've done so much research into the statistics, and I actually found out that you are 30 times more likely to be hit on the head by a falling coconut and die than you are to be eaten by a shark. I bet you didn't know that.
Yeah, no, but I've got a story about that. I was in Hawaii and sitting under a bloody coconut tree, and I'm not shitting you, with my nephew, who was only 7 at the time, and I'm not shitting you, was sitting there eating lunch, and a coconut fell and it missed his head by about 2 centimeters. It just went boom right next to him. So I tell you, you can actually get hit on the head by a coconut, but
you absolutely can. Like, honestly, I looked at that statistic and I thought, yeah, well, I guess it depends on where you live. If you're in Hawaii, you've got a much higher chance, but
well, the trick is don't get under a bloody coconut tree.
Yeah, now, if you learn nothing else from this podcast, that is worth gold, isn't it? Like, you're welcome.
The hell away from coconut trees. Oh God, I love it. Tammy, I'm going to read a list of your achievements, and it blows my bloody mind. And I have to read them because it's like, holy crap. So swam, running 1.5 times around the planet, fastest woman to swim the Cook Strait in New Zealand, the first and only person in the world to swim the Bass Strait, which is Tasmania to Victoria, the fastest person to swim Loch Ness in Scotland, the fastest person to swim the length of the Murray River, which is 2,500 kilometres. What else was that? You broke the world record for New York to New Jersey. And you got a day named after you in New Jersey. You won the Manhattan Island Marathon race. You've done 2 solo swims of the English Channel. You've Lifesaver of the Year. You've won over 150 Victorian state lifesaving titles. See, I'm getting all tongue-tied saying them. The Australian Geographic Adventurer of the Year. You're the ambassador for the National Drowning Prevention Day and Play It Safe by the Water. The ambassador for the Male Hug, which is raising awareness for men's mental health, which is fantastic. And you've also Guinness Book of Records record holder for one of your first swims. But you have broken, like, almost all of your stuff is record breaking, but the first one was swimming the Bass Strait to enter the Guinness Book of Records. Tammy, you may be an endurance swimmer, but I'm not an endurance bloody list reader. I tell you what, that is an incredible list of achievements. I want to unpack some, but that is an incredible list. I know you said
Thank
you
you
for the achievements.
Yeah, look, it is like I said, I don't think about that so much anymore these days. They're wonderful memories and they're wonderful experiences, and it's more the people now that I still am connected to, because even though you think like marathon swimming is a solo sport, really I have people, I wouldn't do it without my support crew, my team, my family, the people that pull me together when I fall apart. They're like the glue that brings me back into track and keep me going. So, and they look after my safety. They navigate me, they feed me. So, I'm pretty much like a baby. I'm in the water and all I have to do is swim, and they take care of everything else for me. So, when you have the peace of mind to know that you've got great people around you that have your back no matter what, you can do amazing things. And I've been so very lucky to have this incredible support crew the whole way along. And I think, that's the highlight for me, is it just makes you realize that, we're all connected and we're meant to help each other, because there's no greater feeling than sharing the success. And I think, my most magical moments are, sharing all of these things with my crew. Like, they're just, moments I'll never forget. Is just like, hey, we did this, together. Like, even Bass Strait, we laughed about it at the end. We sat down, Dawn came over and gave me a hug. And I remember actually one of the news reporters saying to Dawn, is this as good as winning an Olympic gold medal? And she said, actually, it's better. And I think, for her being part of a support crew like that, being part of a team, we all just pull together and we all help each other. And just goes to show what incredible things we can do, what adversity we can overcome when we work together. We're so much stronger together. So, thanks for reading out the list. It's a big one. It's a bit of it reminds me too,
Oh, it's a great list. And when you said about achievements, you said, they're just achievement. It is. What I'm loving about this is that you achieve one thing and then you move to the next. And there is a mentality, and I'm not criticizing it, but we're often taught, for example, when we're in school, once you're a teacher, you'll be happy. Once you get a good wage, you'll be happy. Once you buy a house, you'll be happy. And we sort of live for these things, and then we go, well, that's done. And now, I'm actually not happy. And sometimes we stop at an achievement, instead of what we should do is get the achievement, go far out and really celebrate it, and then go, what's next? What's my next thing that I can grow at? And that's exactly what you've done. It's love it. And I love you talking about your support crew. And I want to just, you and I had a phone call the other day, and I've been laughing about it since, actually, and about you saying, you really love your songs, and of course you can't listen to your song. Well, you probably bloody could now. I don't know. They've probably got some underwater pod thing that you can, God, I don't know. Anyway, because I'm not going to find out. But anyway, you were telling me, you swim, and they've got songs up on a whiteboard. Tell us about that.
So really, my swims, so to cope with such big distances and huge challenges, I break things up. So the swim for me is a series of 30 minutes, because I stop, I tread water, and the crew provide me with some sustenance, and I stop for about 30 seconds to a minute, and then I get going again. So in my mind, I'm swimming for 30-minute blocks, and in between all of that, I've memorized a lot of music, because, as you said, like back in the day, we're going back 30 years now. Hate to say that, but anyway, They didn't have the underwater Walkmans or any of those sorts of things. In fact, the only thing that I did try once was when we used to train at the old Dandenong pool, they had the synchronized swimmers in doing their routines. And they actually had music underwater, and I was fascinated. I thought, how did they get this music underwater? So I went up and I spoke to them, and they have these underwater speakers that they drop in. So I asked if I could borrow them, and I actually used them for a swim around Port Phillip Bay. We put them just inside my shark cage because I was swimming in the shark cage for that one. And I didn't really listen to much music because I thought, I'm going to have these speakers. I had all the ABBA lined up. I had all the things. And Dawn was really excited because it had a microphone and she could speak into it and I'd be able to hear her under the water too, which I wasn't looking forward to because I thought, I might want to turn that volume down a bit. But anyway, so I'm waiting and waiting for the music to start and I couldn't hear it. They had it on full blast. What we didn't take into account is in the pool, the sound waves bounce off the walls of the pool, and it's a stagnant body of water, where here I am, I'm moving all the time in this huge ocean. So couldn't hear anything. So I had to revert back to just the playlist in the mind. But yeah, it's quite normal for me to listen to heaps and heaps of music in the lead up to a swim. Even watch movies. There are even scenes from movies that I can sort of replay. And it's just a way of keeping me going. Music is really uplifting. Like music really moves your soul. And I think, it's just, you have your favorite songs. And when you're feeling really down, if you can kind of listen to those songs, it really helps to perk you up and keep you going. But I give the crew like my playlist as well. And so the only way I communicate is through a whiteboard. So they write a message, they hold it up, and as I'm breathing, I can read it. So I quite often get them to write me, songs so that it jogs my memory as well. So that I go, oh yeah, I forgot about that song. And I might, start playing that song. And I also get them to write me jokes and draw silly pictures. And so it's a bit of a combination. That really is my connection with the outside world. And like I said, they really help me to keep going. Without that, sort of banter, that connection with them and the things they wrote on that whiteboard, I would, really suffer so much more trying to sort of endure, 18, 20 hours of swimming.
Wow. And so 18, 20, how many hours would you do in a day? Like I know you do 30-minute blocks, but in one whole day, how many hours would you go for?
So it depends on the swim. So Bass Strait took me 18 hours. The longest non-stop swim I've ever done was 22 hours. So that's the longest I've ever been in the water non-stop. Wow. The Murray was 3.5 months or 106 days, consecutive days of swimming. But obviously I was stopping and getting out because it's, you can't swim that far all in one go. So it was usually 6 to 8 hours a day on average. And then, we'd camp on the river and then jump back in again in the morning and off we go again. So same sort of deal, just, they had the whiteboard writing me messages again, because it was, the longevity of it was the hardest part. It's just, getting in day after day after day when you're sick, when you're tired, so many things go wrong, so many little niggles and, chafing from bathers and
yuck. I don't
know. I had welts. You end up with welts because it's a rubbing point. So you put as much sort of Vaseline underneath your bathers as you can, but it just becomes a hot spot. So and once it starts, it's really hard to to maintain it. And the scary thing for me with the Murray is that I was worried that I might get an infection because I've got an open wound. So that was the thing that we had to stay on top of. So you've got to really think about small things that can bring you down. So it's so much planning goes into these things. So I think, probably what people wouldn't know is that it's not just about the swimming for me. It's the logistics. It's actually getting to the start line. It's the hardest point. It's like coordinating a team, putting them together, working out how am I going to get the funding, how am I going to pay for a boat, the media, the communications from a safety perspective, because it's not just about my safety, but we're out in the middle of Bass Strait and say one of my crew falls over on the boat, we've got to work out what are we going to do. So, you look at trying to carry, obviously all the medical supplies and have the equivalent of a paramedic or a doctor on board. What's plan B? What's the closest hospitals? How do we communicate with them? So often we have satellite phones for, backup plans. So it's you've got contingency after contingency. So you're always, I guess, looking at worst case scenarios and saying, how can we plan for this? But obviously you can't cover everything. So there's always stuff that surprises you. But, again, that's where I'm so fortunate to have a great team because we work
Mm.
so well together, and we're able to, sort of,
Yeah.
our motto has always been adapt, overcome, and improvise. And that's sort of, what we
Ooh,
do in a swim. So yeah,
I love
that
it.
works.
Do you have the same crew every time, or similar people every
I
time?
Yeah, I've been lucky enough to have similar people most of the time because when I started life saving, I started that before I did the marathon swimming. So one of my first swims was to go across Port Phillip Bay, and that was to do it as a warm up for the English Channel, same distance. Thought, okay, well, this will just give me a bit of a test out. And because I was competing in the life saving, they have boating squads, the IRB, those little red
Yeah,
inflatable rubber duckies they call them.
yeah.
And so the head of the boating squad, I sort of approached him and said, I need some support crew, and I need boats and stuff like that. So I worked together. That's when the connection started with the Royal Life Saving Society, and I ended up a guy by the name of Mark Scott, who's been like amazing, coordinates all my safety and logistics, stayed with me pretty much the whole way. Same with my boat captain, same deal, met this Greek fisherman, and he was a bit skeptical. I said, I want to swim across Port Phillip Bay, and he kind of laughed, showed me pictures of sharks in his office and went, yeah, yeah, yeah. And but after that first swim, it was like they were all hooked, like as much as me, like to the point where I'd get calls saying, so when are we doing a next swim? What do we got
Wow.
next, Tammy? Because I guess because it's an adventure, like, it's such an exciting thing to do. And when you get, a really good group of people who really believe in the cause and, are doing something outside of their normal day as well, it just generates such a great vibe. So I've been pretty fortunate to have that same core group for, most of the swims here. The Murray was a little bit more tricky because I needed a crew for 3.5 months. And of
Yeah.
course, I didn't have the funding to be able to pay. They're all volunteers pretty much. So I can't,
Wow.
I can't afford to pay
Yeah.
other than expenses and stuff like that. I
Yeah.
can't do wages and things like that because I needed about 12 people to be with me on any given day because I needed a water support crew and a land support crew.
Yeah.
So land crew would pack up camp, move further down, stay in touch with us, and just, be ready to sort of get the boats, refuel the boats at the end of the day. So much to think about. So it was like
Wow.
a roster system. And I remember going on 3AW. I was on Ernie Siegler's show,
Yeah.
beautiful Ernie Siegler. And I was actually calling for volunteers, and I had people just, ring up and say, yeah, I can give you 3 weeks here. I've got holidays. And so there were people I hadn't worked with before. So that
Wow.
was the element
Wow.
of surprises, trying to have a cohesive team with
Yeah.
new members coming in and trying to teach them what to do and how swim operates, and trying to keep everybody together because it was kind of like Big Brother on the water. It's not like we were in luxury accommodation. We were in tents and caravans and
Yeah.
camping, and so everybody was in each other's face pretty much, all day, every day. So yeah, made for a tricky environment. But again, we tried to plan lots of fun things as well. So whenever we had, a few spare hours, we'd go into a local town if we were near a town, and
Yeah.
we'd do dress up nights, raid the op shop, and just try and keep it fun as well to keep people's spirits up the whole way along. So yeah, so massive adventure, that one, that's for
Wow.
sure.
So when you were talking about the Murray before, about the infection and that sort of stuff, and something that I read out was you were I don't know if I did read it out, but you call yourself the human water quality tester, for swimming the length of the Murray, but you also champion for change, highlighting the Murray River's environmental problems and all
Like,
that kind of
yep.
stuff. So what's when I think about swimming the Murray River, I think about, ew, I'm going to touch a log and I'm going to shit myself. My feet are going to touch, my hands will touch something, and yuck, oh my God. And then I'll start squealing, But
Yeah.
so for you're kind of like, we all know there's a problem with the Murray and all, the cod are dying out, and it's sort of not a good system. But was it that bad then, or like why did you start thinking there was a water quality problem with it? Did it taste like shit, or did you know it was crappy before you got in? I don't know, I'm interested.
Okay, so I'll preface it by saying, when I first started marathon swimming, I was fortunate enough to travel, pretty much around the world doing swims in lakes, rivers, and oceans in some beautiful places and some pretty horrendous places. And probably one of the ones that stood out to me was when I did this race around Manhattan Island, it's a 48-kilometer swim, and you sort of circumnavigate the island of Manhattan. And I remember going to the pre-race briefing, and the race organizer sat us all down, and there was like 50 international competitors, and I was pretty nervous because it was my first big race. And Dawn was there with me. She'd come to the briefing, and the race organizer said to all of us, "Now, just past the halfway mark, you're going to be swimming past a sewage plant. We want you to take a wide berth around the sewage plant because we don't want it to suck you in."
Oh,
At this point, I'm just going, is this real life? I'm looking at Dawn, I'm having like full on anxiety, panic attacks, picturing myself ending up on this pile of poo, being sucked into this sewage plant and ending up on this pile of poo, right? But not a great way to go out on my first international competition. But Dawn, she's looking at me, and she's got this, sturdy look on her face, and she goes, "Tammy, he's telling a lie. Sewage plants, they don't suck things in.
no, they push
They
out.
spit them out." Well, needless to say, we did take a wide berth around the sewage plant, but we sort of did see a few polywaffles go floating by.
Yeah.
And and as you can probably tell, like I'm a marathon talker, so I can talk while I swim, like in between freestyle. But I kept my mouth shut, and I just swam. And I said to Dawn, "Don't even think of writing on the whiteboard what I'm touching right now. Like, I don't want to see this is, oh, look out, pile of poo on your left." Like, so I just went for it. Anyway, I ended up winning the race that year. And they give you this trophy. It's a perpetual trophy. You don't get to hold it for very long, but it's from Tiffany's. So I was like pretty excited. My first experience holding a Tiffany's trophy. And I'm like, yeah. And probably about 10, 15 minutes after I finished the race, I started to feel really crook. So Dawn took me back to the hotel, and then, I had the worst case of gastro. And actually it was so bad that we had to get a doctor in to give me some injections so that I could actually get on the plane and fly home. I was that crook. And that was just from naturally ingesting the water. And I experienced that in various degrees over the course of sort of my marathon swimming career. So it kind of developed organically as that, being in the water for such a long period of time, I actually my body reflects what the water quality is. So, you get sick, you get infections, that sort of thing. So coming back to Australia, one of the things I wanted to do was to highlight the Murray. The Murray has a few different issues that mostly that there's not enough water in it because they hold a lot of the water up. They don't release it. And so it's been an issue. There's been this fight between farmers and obviously wanting enough for the environment. And it's a bit of a balance because the Murray is our food bowl as well. And I think farmers cop a bad rap a lot of the time too, because they're custodians of the land and they don't, they're not like looking to cause havoc. 95% of them, obviously you still get your ones that do. But so it was really important for me to actually use the swim, not as a scientist, because I think we get a lot of information shoved down our throats and we don't really understand. So my goal in doing the swim was really just to be the human water quality tester. And I was writing a weekly diary in the Herald Sun and doing lots of interviews and saying, this is what I'm experiencing. This is what I'm feeling. This is what's happening along this area. So, and there was a great website set up. And so kids were following me from schools around the world and basically logging in and seeing all posting photos and stuff like that so that they could learn about the ecology of the river, what was affecting it. So there were certain sections, where I was very sick. And, obviously there's a lot of fertilizers in certain areas that run into the river. When the flow is really poor, you're not getting that water moving. Also, when I swam into the Barmah forest, there was what they call black water, which is when so the river had actually been in drought for 5 years before I did my swim. And I actually had to do a reconnaissance pretty much of the whole river in the sort of 18 months leading up just for planning. And I actually thought that it was so low that I thought I'd be walking some parts of it. I didn't think I'd be able to swim it. And then the week before, actually, no, a couple of days before I planned to start, the heavens opened up and the river was in flood and it was so high that it was over the fence lines. And so the SES advised me not to start because it's too dangerous. You could end up in some barbed wire fences. So I postponed by a couple of weeks. But again, that changed the river that I'd seen like in the lead up to the planning was now this raging river. So it got almost like a flush, which was good. So I didn't get as sick as I thought I would in some parts. But the Barmah forest, so what had happened is the river had come out of its banks, it had gone into the forest, and
Yeah.
then it had receded back into the
Yeah.
river again.
Yeah.
And when trees drop their leaves, they have tannin in them, and so the water had soaked up all the tannin out of the leaves and brought that
Mm.
back into the river system. Now, tannin extracts oxygen from the water. So what was happening as I was swimming, we were seeing all the yabbies and the crayfish clambering up the side of the banks because they couldn't breathe in the water. So
Oh,
in
wow.
actual fact, all the fisheries guys were coming along from New South Wales and Victorian fisheries, going along the river to stop people from just picking up their dinner, like going, oh, I'll
Yeah,
have
yeah.
all these crayfish. Could have wiped out the whole species. So there were all sorts of things that were going on, and it was really nice for me to be able to just report it in from a layman's perspective. This is what
Yeah.
I'm seeing, this is what I'm tasting, this is what I'm smelling. So,
Right.
and really my whole goal was to just draw people's attention into the river system and say, hey, do you know have a look in your pantry, do you know that your pasta, your rice, your cereal, this all comes from, the Mildura region, or, so
Mm.
that people started to make that connection. Because I think we kind of lost our country roots connection a
Yeah.
lot, and we don't
Yeah.
understand, a lot of the kids don't understand where things come from and don't make
Mm.
that understanding, so they don't care. So I wanted
Yeah.
to bring back that care and that compassion.
Yeah.
And it was great because when I finished, the Prime Minister actually asked me to fly to Canberra. I met with John Howard at the time
Yeah.
to talk about the same thing, what I'd experienced, and and some more. They injected some more money and worked with the Murray-Darling Basin for many years to try and help rectify
Yeah.
situations. The Murray's still an ongoing issue. It's
Mhm.
hard when you've got 3 states involved. That's the problem. You've got to get 3
Yeah.
states, all with varying interests as well. So
Yeah.
it's an ongoing issue. But I was proud to at least have had that kind of impact that I had on the river and the
Mm.
people along the way. And I tell you what really got to me though was, as I was swimming, there were people that would come down the banks and they would hug me literally, and they would be in tears and say to me, thank you for what you're doing for the river.
Oh,
Like, it was,
wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
one of the beautiful memories that I have of doing the Murray, because the Murray was super special to me, because normally I swim from point A to point B, landmass to landmass. A lot of the swims, you don't get to see anyone other than your crew, which is
Yeah.
lovely. But for the Murray, I literally had people on the banks the whole way. I'd have
Yeah.
people that knew I was swimming past, and they'd have taken an old bed sheet, and they'd write a message and they'd hang it up between the trees. One time I remember swimming through a town called Tooleybuck,
Yeah.
and this beautiful guy and his mum had written a message again, and said, Tammy, cup of tea, Tammy. And so as I'm swimming past, the crew said, oh, there's someone on the side of the river there. He's got his billy boiling and he's written a message, cup of tea. Do you want to stop? And I said, of course. So we made a bit of a detour. We stopped. We had a cup of tea, and a bit of cake and stuff. And it's really nice to be able to connect with people and hear their
Yeah.
stories as well. So I was
Yeah.
getting all sorts of information from people that had lived on the river for many years too. So that was just beautiful.
Wow. And when you talked before about it's not about the achievement, it's about the journey. That's there's so much in that, just in that one swim. And
Oh my goodness,
yeah.
yes. Look, that one swim was, that I could dine out on that for a lifetime. Honestly, the
Mm.
amazing people that I met and the things that happened, even swimming into the locks. So, the Murray has a series of locks that help
Yeah. Yeah.
keep the water level. So when boats are going through, you usually bring your boat in. They open the gates, your boat goes in, they close the gates, and then they level the water down so that you can then open the gate and you can go through. And of course, I had to swim into the lock. So what would happen was, my crew would go in first with the boat, then I would swim in, and then I would climb on my boat. They would shut the gate, they would level the water, open the gate, and when it was safe, I would jump back in. Crew would, follow me out again. So even that, like, people knew that was like a point. People knew that I was coming, and they'd come and watch me swim into the
Yeah.
lock. And I remember going into a lock near Robinvale, at Euston Lock it's called, and there was a lock keeper there again who was he was beside himself. He was crying. He said, I can't believe that you're doing this to highlight the river, and we're so grateful. And it's just such a moving experience. It really, emotionally for me, it just gave me a whole other drive and perspective and a look on life. And when you do things for others, I think when it comes from a place of gratitude and joy, your purpose is really strong. And
Yeah.
I think, to be able to find that kind of a purpose is just such a special thing. And you usually find that you're so much more determined, and you can get through so many more obstacles when your purpose for your journey is really, really strong. And for me, swimming the Murray, that purpose was super strong, because of the people, but also I also had some personal tragedy just before I started the swim. My dad had passed away not long before the swim as well. So, I was kind of doing it for him. So that's there was so many things going on. So emotionally for me, when I got to the end of the Murray River swim, it was a big outpouring of emotion and relief and joy and happiness. But also it was really quite funny because I woke up the next day and I was feeling a bit lost, because for like 106 days I'd had a goal: get up, get in the river, try and swim to a point, whatever. And now here I was on the 107th day, woke up, sure, it was nice to have a sleep in, but I'm like, where am I swimming to today? Like, it's done. Like we were on this adventure, we were on this journey, and it's finished. And so, you like you were talking about before, having something else to aim for. I think sometimes that can be the hardest part, is when you've set a goal and you achieve it, and then there's that, I should be feeling like on top of the world, and you do for a bit, but then there's that big down period as well, where you're going, so is this all there is? And what do I do now? And it's kind of, again, trying to sort of get that mindset back and say, okay, well, it's time to reset, reframe, reset. Where are we moving to? What are we learning about? How are we going to step out of that comfort zone again and do something new? So it's a constant thing that you never stop learning. This is the thing. Like, even now, even with all the challenges I've done, you'd think, hey, she wouldn't be afraid to do anything or whatever. But still, even now, things, things scare me, and I have to again remind myself and go, hey, you've done all these swims. You can't be afraid of, going and speaking in front of a group of school children. Come on, like, it's not that bad. So you constantly, life's a constant battle. No one's ever motivated all the time. No one's ever super enthusiastic. We all have our ups and downs. And I think it's just constantly you're working on just bettering yourself, and just do the best job that you can, and surround yourself with great people. And I think you're already, 3/4 of the way there, but, it's expecting that you're going to have times when you don't feel great. It's expecting that you're going to, not succeed in everything that you try to do. So that's the really big message, really. It's just an ongoing thing that we all go through. That's human nature, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It is. And none of us are perfect either, and there's things you still need to learn about swimming. Like none of us have got all the answers. But I'm really loving it. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and it was talking about how people strive for I don't know what my purpose is, I don't know what my passion is, and that sort of stuff. And what she was saying was just fantastic. And it's just do whatever needs to happen. Do it for someone else. Like, do it beyond yourself, and look around and say, well, what needs to happen here, and what skills can I bring to this to make something better? And you talking about, highlighting the Murray River and all these people, thanking you for highlighting. Sometimes we can have a skill and we think, well, I can't change the world with that. I can't make a difference with that. I'm just a swimmer, or I'm just something or other. But there's always a way to use that thing we've got to impact other people. And it's that thought about thinking beyond ourselves to just thinking, how can I contribute this to help somebody else? And it's, your Murray River swim really highlights doing that. I love it so much.
Look, I 100% agree with you. Look, I have to, I guess, a lot of my thought processes come from my parents, and I was so blessed to have two beautiful parents. Like, my dad grew up through the tail end of the Second World War in Holland, so he was only a youngster, but he used to tell us stories about, like the Luftwaffe coming down the main street, and he saw friends killed. And so always at home, we, I guess we really grew up with an appreciation of how lucky we were to have a roof over our heads, to be safe, and to have food on the table. Like, he even told us a story. He was one of 6 children, and he told us a story of how his dad walked 80 kilometers to get the family a loaf of bread. And he always told me when he ate it, he remembered it tasted like cake. Like, and these sort of things stuck with me. And then when we were growing up, we grew up in Springvale. And at the time, the Vietnamese boat people were coming out, and we had the Enterprise Hostel was where they were all being placed, all the refugees were being placed. And my dad said, I want to help a family. We're going to help a family because I know what it's like to come to a new country, to not know anybody, you know, and to help, you know, to not have anyone give you a start in life, no connections. So we were matched up with a family that had 2 kids, and you know, and so it was really, I guess it was a really big eye opener for, you know, myself for sure, and my brother, and it's become they're like my family now too. Like, I still, you know, we're so
amazing.
close. Yeah, like my brother and sister, basically. So, and again, it just teaches you so much about life, about everything. You know, they had to leave everything behind, had to jump on a boat. Some of them didn't make it. Like, you know, pirates came and attacked the ships.
Far out.
So they lost cousins, and, you know, family went missing. It's, I think we all need a perspective.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Change. Sometimes I think we get in our own little bubble, and our own problems become the biggest thing that we have. And I think if you look outside your bubble and you continue to kind of be thankful for what you have, and look around you and look at there's always somebody in a worse situation than you. And that's what I always say, like, there's always somebody suffering more. There's always somebody who's going through so much more than you. What can you do to help? You know, like, you can't help all the time, but sure, you know, in general, if you go, okay, well, this is my area of expertise, and maybe I can just contribute a little bit. It doesn't have to be something outrageous, you know. It doesn't have to be swimming the Murray, you know.
No, that's right. But often it's just bloody kindness. You know, it's just be bloody kind to people, and you know, it's amazing it's amazing how much I want to say energy, but that's not the right word. But how much something I can't think of the word, but how much that good feeling, you know, that you give to someone that can actually push them over the line. You know,
100%,
save their
100%.
life.
Yeah, that's it, exactly. You know, and I think especially, you know, since we've been through COVID, I think it's even more super important, and we've realised that we need the connection. You know, that we are not individuals. We don't thrive at all being at home locked away. You know, we need people. That's our species. We need to help each other. We need to be with each other. That's, you know, that's how we get fulfillment in our lives, and that's how we, you know, we go out and we experience and we grow when people are behind us, and they help us or offer us that, you know, just a little bit of generosity or kindness. It just makes such a big difference. You know, one of my favorite things is to just walk. When I take the dog for a walk, I'd love just smiling and saying hello to people. You know, you see people that look really sad. They'll be, you know, and they're obviously got something going on, or perhaps just not a great mood, and you kind of go, you know, morning, and you see them kind of go, and you think, well, you know, that can change their whole day. Like, you know, because it's like when you're driving and you're trying to sort of sneak across the lane, and no one will let you in, and it gets you in that, oh God, they're not letting me in. And then you start to have that negative, you know, mindset. But when somebody lets you in, it's like, oh, that was so lovely of them. And you wave and you go in, and you kind of like, you're more likely to pay that forward because you're already in that frame of mind. And I think, you know, this is a thing, isn't it? It's a bit like we're trying to make it contagious. Do one small thing for one person, and hopefully that person does it for somebody else. And then, you know, so impacting one person can really have like this spider web effect of impacting lots of people. And I think, you know, that's something that's very realistic for us to do on a daily basis, is to, you know, just be kind to someone in the supermarket, whatever, letting them in the, you know, in the traffic, and they're little teeny tiny things that don't cost you anything. So,
well, you know, it's funny because, and I do that to, especially to elderly people, you know, I'm always, and I say it the same as you, morning, you know, and their face lights up. But that bit you just said about impacting people, I just did a video the other, last week. I stayed down at Paynesville and did a talk, you know, for a wellbeing program. And the next morning I was so inspired to just do a video. Mind you, my face looked nothing like the epitome of wellness, but anyway, I was exhausted. But but what I was really thinking about it, because at the end of the night, you know, people were saying to me, "Oh, that was thought provoking, that was so inspiring," and all those great things. But then one woman came up and she said, "You know, we only have to change one person's life, don't we?" And I said, "You know, we that's so true. And I said, when I do my talks and things, I love to impact many, but if there's that one person who takes away a profound message, and then I did a video the next morning on it, it's like, if you profoundly impact one person and then that person ends up telling 10 and then they all tell 10 and now it's 10, so on and so on and so on, you can end up impacting 1 million people before you know it. You know, like people say, no one wants to hear what I've got to say, I've got nothing to say, but bullshit, because if you say it from your heart and you friggin' mean it and you extend love to and hit someone else's heart, that can go for miles. That can, you think you've got nothing to offer, but you can change the world. You know, it's
Absolutely. And you know what, and it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't have to be anything outrageous. It's not like you have to, you know, go and really put yourself out. There's small things, like I said, you know, every single day we see people and just being kind and grateful and saying hello. And you know, sometimes people just need that. It just changes their day, like
absolutely.
I said, and it makes others, you know, behave the same way, because you're passing it on. You're showing that, you know, there is kindness in the world. And so then you go, okay, well, I'll pass that on because I'm happy now. So I'm more likely to smile and help somebody else out if somebody's done it for me. And that's like you said, you know, from one person to another, and it just gets passed on. So I think, you know, that's the greatest thing, simplest and greatest thing we can do.
I know. And when we experience kindness and we're feeling happy, we're more likely to be open and connected. And that's where we're going to make the difference. Oh, I love this conversation. But I'm going to get back to you. I'm going to get back to swimming just for a second, because I want to ask one thing. The Loch Ness. You swam across the Scottish Loch Ness and the English Channel, and in fact, you went across the English Channel twice, and you did the fastest solo swimming, but you also did the first brother and sister to cross. Did your brother swims as well?
Yeah, he's just as crazy as me.
That's fantastic.
It runs in the family. What can I say?
You planning another brother sister event anytime or not?
No, we're not at the moment. No, we did that. God, that was so long ago now. But that was sort of at the very beginning of both our endurance careers. And he's actually a lot more talented. He's doing like triathlons, long enduro triathlons now. So he's good at running and riding as well, which I don't have talents in running. I'm trying to run, but it's sort of not been my thing. So, you know, we've gone in different ways, but it was really special to be able to do it. But the backstory with that is, so we went over to the English Channel in '93 with the goal of becoming the first brother and sister to swim together. And we did like a lot of cold water training. So you have to acclimatize to cold water, because that's, you know, at the time it had a 7% success rate, the English Channel, and most of that was due to people getting hypothermia.
Yeah.
So which is when your core body temperature just drops 3 degrees, and you know, there's that slow creeping of
slow death.
Slow death. Yeah. You know, and most people, when they get cold, they get out of the water to, you know, make themselves safe, but you've got to keep swimming, even though you know you're heading into different stages of hypothermia. So to combat it, we swam the whole winter in Port Phillip Bay. So we were down every morning. You know, Bay got down to like 9 degrees, and we were there at 6 o'clock in the morning in the dark, because you have to get used to swimming in the dark as well, because you could cross in the dark. So we were out swimming, you know, in the dark. And I know. And we took the electric blankets off our beds. We were like in shorts and t-shirt. We were committed to being really ready for the cold. And the other thing that you have to do is, so your other teammate when you're swimming long distances, cold water, is body fat. So we started by just eating lots of carbs and, you know, pastas and stuff, but it didn't really help us gain weight. So we had to sort of, you know, eat lots of junk food as well to try and help bulk up. So by the time we got over to the channel, I'd put on 10 kilos and John had put on 10 kilos as well. But he's a lot taller and skinnier than me. So did notice that he was actually feeling the cold a lot quicker than I was, even in our training swims. And I was actually a bit concerned about him. So we traveled over there, and it was one of the first big swims that Dawn came on board and, you know, came across to England with us. And so we have 2 separate boats. That's sort of the rules of the channel. Everybody has to have their own support boat. So we started together on the beach, and Dawn was on John's boat, and, you know, I had some my swim coach on mine. we headed off and we swam together probably for about the first 3 or 4 hours. And then he sort of took off and he decided he was going to be the skinniest and the fastest man across the channel. So he was at a faster pace than me, I think, because he wanted to outswim the cold. So he headed off, and I just kept asking my support crew, keep me updated on where he is and what's going on. And as they got towards the end, I was asking about John, and they weren't giving me messages back so quickly. And I sensed that something was wrong. I didn't know what exactly had happened, but I knew something hadn't gone to plan because he hadn't finished yet, and I expected that he would have beaten me across. So anyway, I finished my swim and I set the fastest time for the year, swam back to the boat, and I said to them, oh, fantastic. How's John? Where is he? Is he finished? What's going on? And that's when they told me that 4 kilometres away from the coast of France, he actually had disappeared under the boat, stopped breathing, hypothermic. Dawn had to jump in and actually grab him and save him. And she hauled him back on board the boat, gave him mouth to mouth. She broke 4 ribs in the process because it was such a rough crossing. It was cold and rough that day that we went. So she managed to get him back, and they rushed him back to the hospital, and he was okay. He was shaken up, but he was fine. So it was a really big scare, to understand the full impact of hypothermia, because I guess it was something that we knew was serious, but we didn't know was that serious. So to John's credit, we got back to Australia, and he said, I want to go back and let's do this again next year. I want to be the first brother sister. I want to make it across. And I said, fantastic. I said, but you'll need to put on some more weight because, you definitely weren't big enough to, last the distance. So he really struggled putting on weight. But Dawn, she said she had a secret recipe for putting on weight. And she said to him, well, she used to own a pub in Balmain, and she said, I'd like you to drink a big glass of stout mixed with a teeny tiny bit of lemonade every night before you go to bed. And John adhered to that dietary plan and gained 22 kilos the following year.
Oh my God.
Yeah, 22 kilos. Yeah. And he made it across, and we became the first brother and sister. So we went back, the following year, and he conquered conquered the channel. And so hypothermia, very scary. And so it sounds really weird, but for a sporting person to say, I actually have to put on weight because it's life or death, like quite literally, you need the weight. And it actually helps you to some degree also when you swim, because fat gives you buoyancy. So the more body fat you have, the better you float. So the more efficient you are, because you're at the top of the water and you're not having to expend so much energy with your muscles trying to keep yourself up. So you're really just focusing on propelling forward. So there's some advantages to it. Obviously, you have to strengthen your muscles to be able to pull that weight. But so it's a bit of a juggle. But it's funny going over to the English Channel because you're on standby when you get there. So you have like a 2-week window to swim. And you're in communication constantly with your boatman, and he's trying to match up the weather and the tides. And every day, you speak to him, he says, no, look, tomorrow doesn't look very good. We've got the winds coming in, But he might call you in the afternoon and say, listen, we've got a change of plan. There's a break in the weather. I want you to be ready to go in 4 hours. Wow. And so you're kind of on this constant high alert for this 2-week time period. So it's very hard mentally to be ready to go as well. It's kind of like, are we going to go today? Are we not going to go? So you get up, but you go down to Dover Beach, and that's where all the aspiring channel swimmers go to train. And so you kind of like compare tummies. You kind of go, wow, you look great. How'd you manage to put on all that weight? So, it's funny to think that you exchange these stories about how did you get so fat?
Oh my God, I love it. I've been to Dover, actually, seen the White Cliffs, and I tell you what, I was just thinking I'd be fine. I'd be floating because I've got this a tubular tire around my gut, It'd probably be bobbing my head in and out of the water.
I always say to people, you put on a bit of weight, that's okay. Just tell people you're training for a channel swim.
Or just go for a swim. How long does it take to get across the English Channel?
So the English Channel is 35 kilometres in a straight line, but you never end up swimming that way because you've got the tides running along the English coast and the French coast. So you usually end up doing almost like an S course. So it's probably closer to 40-ish. And it took me 8 hours and 32 minutes to swim across. Yeah. So that's quite a short one. But,
that's still a big day's work, I can tell you.
Well, I never thought I'd say that. I mean, at the time when I swam the channel, that was like, oh my God, I remember crying when I saw the White Cliffs of Dover, because I'd been dreaming about, going to England. It was my first time in England. I'd been swimming about the channel for so long. But as I continued on, it's like now I look back and go, yeah, the channel, that was great. Just a short swim, really, compared to when you do Bass Strait, it's 100 Ks, or the Murray, 2,500. So it's amazing what your mind gets used to, though. Like, when you're focused on something and, you achieve, so you set your goal, you achieve it, and then you go, wow, I've got so much confidence now that what can I do next? And so you build. I think the secret is building. It's just slowly, like climbing up a ladder. You just extend yourself a little bit further, and that's kind of what I did throughout my marathon swimming career. I started with a 20-kilometer swim, was my first ever marathon, and then I went to a 30-kilometer, and then I tried a couple of 4 or 5 40s, and then I did a 60, and then I did like 100. So it's kind of always been a little bit further. What can I do? And every swim I approach with, what can I learn from this? What is this swim going to teach me? Because I'm learning so much about my mind. I'm learning about what my body can cope. I'm learning about the correlation. I'm learning what I can eat, how we can work together better as a support crew. So many things that you take away from every swim. And I think as long as you do that every time you go on a challenge or you set yourself a goal, if you have that thought in mind, is what am I going to learn? What have I learned from this, or what am I learning? What has it taught me? Then you always think about the lessons, and you don't think so much about the actual achievement. And I think that's where the growth is. You see the learning.
Yeah, and that's why we're here. We're not here to achieve, we're here to grow. We're here. Well, I think we are, but anyway.
100%.
What about in the Loch Ness? Like, honest, come on, tell me the truth. Were you hoping to see the Loch Ness monster? Because I would be. That might be the only thing that would get me in the bloody water, hoping that I might have a swim with it.
Well, actually, I had never been to Scotland prior to, and of course, lots of people had told me, that's where the monster lives, and there was all this stuff. And I was joking about it, honestly. I was having a bit of a laugh, going, yeah, monsters, right. And I got to Scotland, and I remember arriving and going for my first training swim at the loch, and I was literally took my breath away, because it is, to paint a picture, it's a long, narrow body of water with 2 huge mountain ranges on either side. It sits in a valley called the Great Glen, and the average depth of the water is 200 plus meters. Now, the watercolor is black because there's peat that washes down from the mountains into the water. So you dive in, it is the coldest water I've ever swum in. It is fresh water. So when you swim in the ocean, the difference is, like, you can swim in cold water in the ocean, but it doesn't seem to be, it's not as dense, and it doesn't feel as heavy, because you get that buoyancy from the salt. But in fresh water, you don't have that buoyancy. So I immediately dived in, freezing, and started to sink. And I hadn't had that experience before. And I'm swimming, and I'm looking at the blackness below, and there's mist hanging low, and I'm thinking, oh my God, my mind, again, my fears started to run away with me, and I'm thinking the monster's going to come up and eat me at any point. Here I am, this person, very rational person, I would have thought, but I'm placed in this situation, and all of a sudden my mind's just running crazy with all the things that can happen. So I hopped out, and reassessed and went, yeah, of course there's no monster, that's fine. But it is an eerie place, and one of the coldest swims. And but again, what I do remember from Scotland is the warmth of the people. Even though the water was cold, the most beautiful people. Like, honestly, a lot of them were like, when I told them what I was there to do, they were like, what? We never swim in the loch. Like, a hot summer's day in Scotland is 16 degrees, and they're all out in shorts and T-shirts going, oh, what a great summer this is, and I'm like still in my trackies going, how am I going to manage this? But yeah, look, one of the things I loved too was that Dawn's father was Scottish, Dawn Fraser. And so she was part of my support crew, and she actually speaks Gaelic. And so it was quite funny. We had so many adventures outside of the swim, to kind of take the edge off, so to speak, for the actual swim. But I just remember I was so cold that at one point I really did wish that Nessie had come up and eat me, because I was that cold. And I said that to Dawn. She goes, how you going? And I'm like, I'm freezing. I wish Nessie had eat me. And she replied back to me, well, Nessie doesn't like cold cuts, so just keep swimming, you know. So very practical, you know, these are the things you laugh about afterwards, but you know, so it's that kind of a banter that I have with my crew, and yeah, so getting to the finish was pretty special. And I remember the crew had actually arranged for a Scottish piper to be
Oh,
on the
wow.
bank, and yeah, and he was playing Waltzing Matilda on his bagpipes, fully dressed. He actually played at Madonna's wedding, so he was a pretty Duncan McGillivray was his name, and
Wow.
I was so cold I couldn't really appreciate it, to be honest with you. I heard it, but I was that close to that place being hypothermic, because you know it was 8 degrees.
Yeah.
And I was that cold. They had to actually whisk me away and take me back to the house that we were staying in and run like a tepid bath and just gently warm my temperature, because the frightening thing with hypothermia is what they call after drop, which is when, so your body, you probably noticed when you get cold, one of the first things that happens is your fingers and your toes, your hands, they sort of start to get, very numb, and you see them go a little bit blue. And that's just the body shutting down. It's constricting the vessels, slowing the blood flow out to the peripherals, because it doesn't want it to come back cold and then give you a heart attack. So quite literally, it's just protecting the core, protecting the heart, the lungs, and obviously the brain. So the reverse of that is, so when you're rewarming, if you warm too quickly in your peripherals, then that blood comes back and you can again have a heart attack. So the idea is to really just warm yourself very, very slowly. So I literally was in just probably what you would call a cold bath to start with, compared to Loch Ness. It was probably like a 10-degree, 12-degree bath. So, and they gradually had to warm it up because I was that cold. So yeah, so it was pretty scary for me. That was probably the closest I'd come to being hypothermic. I had a couple experiences where I've known I'm close, but the scary thing with hypothermia is that you think you're in control, but you're not. So if somebody asks you a question like, are you okay? You can go, yes, and you can reply simple, to simple questions. But if somebody asks you, what's your date of birth? What's your middle name? Anything that takes a little bit more thought process, you can't do that.
Brain's frozen.
Your brain is literally, it's like being in a big Slurpee. Your brain's just absolutely frozen. So they're kind of cues also that I have a pact with my crew, usually Dawn, and I say to her, if you think I'm getting close to hypothermia, because I need somebody else to make that call, because I can't make the call myself. So after that experience with John, we realised, because, not 10 minutes before, Dawn had said, are you okay? And he said, yes. And then 10 minutes later, under the boat. So now we know that if there's any sort of thought where, we're in any danger, we just ask at the feed stop, what's your date of birth? Where do you live? What day is it? Those sorts of questions. And I know that if I don't answer those straight away, that, Dawn will call the swim off and she'll pull me out of the water. So you've got to have this trust. So literally I'm placing my life in the hands of the crew, because they've got to make those decisions. It's taken out of my hands. When you're hypothermic, you cannot make those decisions anymore. So, and that's the really hard part about, all the training and, stuff that you put in for these things. So it's like, do I pull them out? So it's a really hard, position to put your crew in as well, to make that decision for you. So yeah, there's a lot of process and thought that goes into it, and a lot of trust. So yeah, hypothermia, scary thing.
Look, fantastic, Tammy. If you're trying to sell me to become a swimmer, you haven't done a very good job.
Well, I don't need the competition, Karen, so that's okay.
Well, I've got better buoyancy than you, I can assure you of that. But a greater fear of the bloody one. No, don't worry, you've got no competition here. You and I can compete over the stage. We'll just stay on that level.
All right, sounds good.
Because you have not convinced me to get in that water, I can tell you what. Look, I love this, and we're going to wrap up in a minute, but there's something I want to ask you about. You talk about the 5 habits of highly persistent people, and clearly to swim, like this, and to continue on, and to have close calls, and then still complete it, and then go, I'm going to do it again. Like, that's persistence, and all the lead up that goes on leading, you know, yeah, the months, if not years, leading up to a big thing. That's persistency. So what are the 5 habits that you think are in highly persistent people?
Oh, absolutely. Look, persistence, I'd say, is one of the keys to success, because you know what, I'm not talented. You know, honestly, I wasn't the most gifted child in the water swimming. I don't have any special gifts. And I really do think that, you know, my biggest gift is that I don't give up. And
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
persistence at the end of the day. So number one, I'd have to say would be passion. Whatever you do, you've got to have your purpose and your passion, because
yeah,
that's your driving force. That's your why. That's something that you come back to when you're feeling really bad. You've got to
yeah,
have that starting point to relate to. The second thing is really not looking for excuses. You know, I think when you make your commitment to something, there's no excuses. You
yeah,
have to make this non-negotiable contract and say, well, you know, I want to do this, so this is my level of commitment, and I'm not going to make any excuses for what I'm doing. The third thing is to be ready for change. Like, I think a lot of us, you know, aren't prepared for change, but I think if you're in your mind and you're going to know that you're going to go down this road, and it's going to have rocky points, it's going to have great points, but it's going to have a lot of bumps along the way, and you're ready for that, and your mind accepts that and says, okay, this is not going to be easy. Already you're halfway there, because
yeah,
you're having that expectation. It doesn't sort of take you by surprise. And I think that's the biggest thing that stops us, is when something happens and it takes us by surprise. But if we know it's coming, we can kind of almost have it in our mind, and it's almost like a big mental hurdle that we've already crossed before we get going. And the fourth thing is surround yourself with positive people. I've spoken a lot about that today, but honestly, if you've got people around you that are lifting you up rather than bringing you down, it makes a tremendous difference. And also, it's like an accountability crew as well. You know, when I train, I have a coach at the pool in the mornings, and I have a squad. You know, they're other extra reasons, extra layers for me to get up, get going, and go to the pool and swim all those laps. So having people to keep you accountable just makes us, you know, give that extra bit of commitment to do things, helps keep us going. And the final thing is get out of your comfort zone every day. You know, I think that, you know, we live in this bubble. We spoke about being in this bubble, and I'm not talking about doing like massive change every single day. It can be something really, really small, just extending yourself a little bit every single day, getting used to knowing that growth happens in the hard places. You know, we don't get any better if we're not pushed a little bit, and we don't have that little bit of anxiety and fear. It's actually good for us. It's not a bad thing. You know, I'm not talking about the crippling anxiety and the crippling fear, but just that little bit of going, I'm a bit, you know, nervous about this. That's okay. And it's good to have a bit of that in your day every single day, because you get conditioned to it. You know, you really get used to it. And that's, again, something that I've done, you know, my whole life. I guess I was pretty lucky with being a swimmer, because every time you go to training, your coach is asking you to step outside your comfort zone. He's wanting you to do stuff and say, hey, I need you to be doing these repeats at this time. And I know it's going to be hard, and I know you've never done it before, but this is what you've got to try. And quite often you don't make it. You might ask me to do 10 100s on a cycle that, you know, let's say 1 minute 20. And I do 7 of them, and I absolutely can't make the last 3. That's okay, because you know what, I've already extended myself, and I do that same set again, you know, a couple of days later, and I might get to 8 or 9. And then, you know, another week later or 2 weeks later, I might actually do the whole lot, 10 100s on the 120. That's progress. That's excitement. But you've got to be prepared for pushing yourself outside that comfort zone, and knowing that failure is a good thing, because that's where growth is.
I agree. Oh, I love those 5. That's fantastic. I agree with your persistence, God, by God, because we do give up too quick. We do, and as soon as it hurts, that's too hard, and I'm a bit scared of that. But that's still, I'm not going to become a persistent swimmer.
That's okay. Do you know what? One of the beautiful things about being human is that we all have our strengths and talents. And if we were all good at everything, wouldn't it be a boring place? So I think, you know, it's nice. We all have, you know, certain things that, you know, are just our passions, and that we love doing, and it makes us all unique. So it's perfectly great.
100%. And I love public speaking, and most people are like, I would die if I got on that stage. So
do you know what? I used to be like that too, though. funnily enough, when I first started swimming, I was very shy at school, but really, really shy. And once I started getting a little bit of publicity for doing a couple of swims, I started getting asked to speak at Rotary clubs and things like that. And I remember going to my first school assembly, and I thought I was going to vomit all over the principal because I was up on the stage and I was so nervous, and I just thought, how am I going to do this? And I could feel the sweat just rolling down my back, and again, I kept doing it, and I kept, pushing myself and saying, come on. And now I still get a bit nervous, but I know that nervous is, it's a good thing to be nervous, that pumped up sort of adrenaline energy. And now I love it. I love connecting with people like yourself. It's so nice to, make a difference and share stories with people. It's just the best thing ever. So, again, you can see you can do whatever you want to do. I honestly would never have thought I'd be sitting here saying to you, I love speaking.
Well, I do.
See, there you go. That's your thing.
Because I started off singing, when I was 15. So I've been on stage since I was 15. So to me, it's easy. It was a natural progression. But but getting on stage in the first place wasn't freaking easy. That was terrifying. But
see, it's these hurdles that you have to overcome, and you do them in small ways, and you keep going, and then your brain accepts it. So it's kudos to you. It's a skill set that a lot of people are very afraid of.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Tammy, this has been absolutely fabulous chatting with you.
Are we finishing already?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, well, I keep saying to people, I'm going to just knock them back and make them 45 minutes, and every single one we just get talking and talking and talking. But as long as it's great talk, I don't care. But you and I are going to chat in a couple of days anyway and have another conversation. But and you're coming to the Girls at Hammers conference. In 2 weeks and 3 whenever I put this out. I'll put it out next week. Be 3 weeks away, but it's going to be. I can't wait to meet you in person, and you need to be careful because I'm a big hugger. And
I love hugging as well. We're going to get along like a house on fire. Big hug.
Yeah, I'm a big squisher.
Great.
Oh, but it's going to be fantastic. But thank you so much for sharing all this today. And, I hope people listen. Well, I hope people listen. Of course, they're going to listen to it. But, and especially the people coming to the conference, they're going to go, oh, my God, I can't wait to meet Tammy. The people who are not coming because we're sold out are going to be, God damn it, why didn't I buy a ticket? But
that's it.
But I've thoroughly enjoyed this. And I'm totally in admiration for you for what you've done. And I know you just say, well, that's it. But the things you've done are phenomenal. They're not just what the average person does. Most of us are scared of swimming outside of the pool or past where we can't stand up, and it's just, I think that's phenomenal. I admire all that about you. But I tell you what, and I'm not taking away from any of that because I think that's great. What I love most about you is your kindness and your care, for the world and for others, and your eagerness for every day contributing to people and making their world better, and the world needs much more of that. And I truly value that so deeply in you, and I'm so glad we've connected. You're just a beautiful. Am I making you cry? Stop it! You make me cry. Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, you're gorgeous. Thank you. No, but you're right. That's what life's all about, though. And I think also as you get older, you come to realize that it is so much more than just running around and the house you live in or the car that you have. All those. Things that they're actually worthless. It's the connections, the people, how you make an impact in people's lives. That's the best part about being here on the planet is the biggest thing you can do is to help others.
Yeah. 100% agree. God, I love you. I can't wait to get that big hug. I might take you home with me, I think.
Sounds good.
You're probably awesome. All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Can't wait. See you soon.
Yeah, ta-da.
Bye-bye.